on today's StoryBeat.
Andrew Barth Feldman, Renee Rapp, Kyle Selig, the list is endless. As many as the success stories have happened around, the winners, more success has happened with people that have just participated in the program. They weren't even finalists or winners, but they were just in the show and have gone on to do this thing and have also absolutely made it on Broadway or doing film or doing regional theater, but they're still in the business.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Kiesha Lalama, is an internationally recognized dancer, choreographer, and teacher who has created works for stage, film, and TV. She's currently Point Park University's interim Dean of Theater, Film, and Animation, and the executive producer of the Pittsburgh Playhouse. Kiesha co-founded and has choreographed 15 years of Broadway's The Jimmy Awards, which has reached over 120,000 students annually. She choreographed the feature films The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Sorority Row, the documentary series Broadway or Bust for PBS, and two critically acclaimed TV series, Outsiders and American Rust. Her international concert dance works continue to be performed throughout Europe and Asia, including Shed, Catapult, Alegria, Kinex, Aftermath, Wish, Jolt, Unsung Moment, and Vicious Cycle. She's also created 3 critically acclaimed full-length dance theater productions, including The Bench, Journey into Love, HeartShakes, and Bound in Before. Kiesha's regional theater highlights include All Shook Up at North Shore Music Theater, Jesus Christ Superstar at Kansas City Starlight Theater, Into the Woods at Arsht Center, and for the Pittsburgh CLO, Judge Jackie Justice, Ruthless the Musical, First Date, and the Gene Kelly Awards. For the record, Kiesha and I have known one another for a number of years as we were both faculty members in the Conservatory of Performing Arts at Point Park. So for all those reasons and many more, it's my great pleasure to welcome the dancer, choreographer, educator, and executive producer of the Pittsburgh Playhouse, Kiesha Lalama, to StoryBeat today. Kiesha, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so good to see you on the screen. But thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show with me, and it's terrific to see you too. So let's go back in your history just a little bit. You've been a dancer and a choreographer for some time now. How old were you when you first became interested in dance and being a dancer?
Wow, yeah. So I actually was interested in movement gymnastics when I was 3 years old. I kept flipping on furniture in my house, and my mom said, "We need to put you into class because I'm done with you breaking my couches." So I signed up for gymnastics at a very young age and then grew out of it. A whole bunch of my friends were getting injured. I got injured, and just the fear kind of kicked in, and I got tall. So that was a problem. And I took about a year or two off from that kind of training, and I dabbled in some sports and basketball, softball, those kinds of things. Loved it, and I was always making dances and routines in my front yard, in my basement, in my backyard with my neighbors, my sisters. And my mom said, "Why don't you sign up for dance class? There's a dance studio that opened up in town." And I started training there, and I was about 14, 15 years old.
Right.
So it was a little later than most, but I had that gymnastic background. It definitely changed my life when I entered that space.
So you knew early on that you were going to be a physical person. You like to move through space.
Yeah, I've always been physical. My family it's either artists or athletes, and so I feel as if I'm this hybrid, and I've got both. So I'm feel so blessed. But it's just part of it, and certainly Western PA with the athleticism and football. My dad's a football coach. My mother is an artist in her own right, but she went into nursing. And it all comes down to what you're around and what you're exposed to with your family. And for me, it was both. And so I feel as if I had the best of both worlds.
Was that what drew you to dance? Was that it was both things?
Yeah, I mean, it was I
Mm-hmm.
am an athletic
Mm-hmm.
dancer. So ballet was interesting. That was a little challenging for me because it really is about craft rather than adrenaline. And for me, I definitely gravitated more towards jazz because it's flashier, aggressive, athletic. I could tumble and do tricks and still do those kinds of things. So I was definitely more of the commercial side of things.
I'm going to probably use this word wrong, but it's less graceful than ballet. Is that a good way to say it?
Sure. I mean, I will say that there is a heightened sophistication about ballet that I have such a respect for. I really love choreographing ballet works with ballerinas that are trained that way. I just respect it because I know what goes into it. My body back in the day when you had certain kind of types and looks and body types, I didn't fit that mold for ballet either. My big gymnastic legs and strength just didn't lend itself to that kind of aesthetic, which is fine. But I was able to appreciate it and definitely kind of gear towards the more athletic side.
That's the stereotype of the willowy ballet dancer.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that ballet, it takes a lot of strength to do ballet. And I think people underestimate the power that goes into it because they make it look effortless and that maybe it comes off that way, but it's actually really, really powerful. And it is athletic and aggressive, don't get me wrong.
Right.
They make it look like it's floating on air and all those wonderful heightened experiences because of their technique. So it's actually quite interesting if you look at the dynamic between the two. They both take the same kind of athleticism, just looks different because of the release, the style, and the way it's displayed through the aesthetic.
Well, I like to use the example of Fred Astaire because he was extremely athletic and he worked his butt off to make those things look like they were just floating through air, like he was effortless.
That's right.
And that's what it takes. You really have to work at it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I look at athletes and you think, wow, how hard could that be to throw a football 90 yards or something? And they make it look effortless once you reach that level. But yeah, that's all part of it.
Well, yeah, you go out and do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And then you try it and go, wait a second, maybe not.
So where did you get your training?
So I trained with Janet Amoroso first in Beaver County for dance. And then I trained with Doris Singer Dance Studios also in Beaver County. And then moved on to the one and only Point Park University. So I trained at Point Park University, and this entire institution has really launched my career.
So you've been there quite some time then.
Yeah, I've been here for a long time. I started, I transferred. I went to Slippery Rock University for a semester. Believe it or not, the athletic side of me, I threw discus and shot put in high school.
Really?
Yes. So
Wow.
I definitely have my dad's football quarterback arm. And ironically enough, both of my boys ended up throwing discus and shot put too through high school and jacks through college.
Hmm.
But I ended up getting a scholarship at Slippery Rock for discus and dance. But no one talked about how I was going to rehearse and be at track practice at the same time. And so it just became a conflicting issue. And then I hurt my knee really bad. So I took a semester off. I had surgery. And all of these injuries are from the past gymnastic training. You don't realize what it does to you long term. And, I took a semester off. I went to New York City. I watched 2 Broadway shows with my teacher, Doris, and her daughter, Darcy. And that was it. I was like, I'm gonna do that. I watched the Will Rogers Follies, and they did the whole like slap dance, that whole thing. And in that moment, I said, that's what I'm gonna do. I took class at the Broadway Dance Center. I'll never forget this. David Story did a contemporary. I didn't know what kind of dance that was. Contemporary dance combination to what was the music? Oh, More Than Words. Good song in the early
More
90s.
than
More
words.
Than Words. Remember that song? And I never felt a sense of freedom or connection to dance that way. And I went back home and talked with one of my colleagues, Kim Lahaney, who was going to Point Park. And actually, she was teaching in the studio when I went back home with Doris and Darcy. And she said, you need to go to Point Park. I said, what's that? And I went in for my audition and I got in. But as soon as I put my feet on the ground here and I met Ron Tassone and some of the faculty members, I knew this was the place for me.
For the listeners who have no idea, what is it about Point Park that makes it unique, special, and internationally recognized?
I think Point Park is a funky little place. It's like that little place that could. there's a family style here. There's something about the communication and the connection between the humans that are here.
Hmm.
Everybody cares. I think people care. I don't want to say too much. Maybe they care too much, but it's an honest, sincere investment in each other, in your colleagues, in your professors, in your friends, in the staff. There's a because it's so small, it is a tight knit community, and through the years, those connections are there with you forever. I still have some of my college friends that I consider my best friends, sisters, brothers today.
Well, me too, in a totally different way from
Yeah,
different schools. But yes, I think that's
yeah,
one of the things that's great about advanced education is that's where you form your basic foundational peer group, not just education, but your actual the people that you're going to know for the rest of your career, assuming you have a career. Not everybody in the arts does.
yeah. And even if you decide not to go into it, you have formed those bonds because you walked through some kind of transition together, right?
Hmm.
I don't want to say you walk through a fire necessarily, but you're in those transformative years where you're finding yourself and who you really want to become, and those people are with you. So as you find your voice and you find yourself, those are the people walking with you, picking you up or cheering you on, and it's an amazing bond that can't really be matched.
And Point Park itself, as I say, is internationally recognized for dance. You turn out tons of dancers that go off into the real world and become dancers or dance teachers. One of those too.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
it is. It's remarkable. Our success stories are, I mean, unlimited. I don't even know another word. I don't know a cruise ship, a theme park, a Broadway show, a concert dance company without a Point Parker that is currently in it or has gone through it.
Hmm.
And for me, because I'm so young and sprite-like, uh, I've been doing this for so long. I feel like, through the years, the coolest thing in the world is seeing my friends, my peers, kind of take the behind the table seat, become the artistic directors, become the vision for tomorrow, change and transform the industry to meet the needs of today's market
Hmm.
and the talents of the students. And so I think that's the coolest thing about Point Park is that so many of the people that have graduated are in it for the long term. And even if you're not in the business for the long term, you can still enjoy it, reconnect with your friends, appreciate it because you truly had a wonderful, remarkable experience.
All right. So, what point in your life did you think to yourself, you know what? I've had this training. I love doing this. When did you think you were really good at both dance and then choreographing
That's
dance?
fun.
When did you know you were good at it?
So for me, I was always a choreographer.
Mm.
I think that's the kind of difference. I was never really interested in performing. It was fine. I think for me, dance never replaced the adrenaline rush that is gymnastics. When you're standing in the corner on a floor mat, and as young as I was, I'll never forget that fire, that light that ignites within your soul to do a round off back handspring double back. I mean, there's a flip of that switch, and there's an energy that for me, dance in the studio never really fulfilled. That adrenaline fire, I can't even, there's no word to put into it, right? And so, ironically enough, I remember when I got my master's program, my advisor had asked me, "What is your very first memory of choreographing?" And I never thought about it. My master's had kind of made me dig deep and reflect and really think about myself and my history and where I came from. And so this one memory surfaced immediately. And I remember standing in the corner of the gymnastic floor, and my coach Danny looked at me, and he had a red tank top on, and he said, "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you choreographed, or why aren't you dancing?" And I said, "The choreography doesn't go with the music." He said, "What do you mean it doesn't go with the music?" I said, "Don't you hear that? It sounds like a puppet. It doesn't, what you're giving me doesn't go with the music." And he said, "Okay, fine, choreograph it yourself." I was 9. I mean, so I always, when I hear music, I see movement. And so if I'm at a spa or getting a massage or driving a car, it's hard for me to listen to music because I just see movement or patterns, choreography, and all the things. So that has always been there. And then, as I mentioned, when I stopped gymnastics, I would be in my backyard forcing my sisters and my neighbors, Nikki and Renee, to do plays with us. And every Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter and Flag Day, we forced our families into watching our show. And so it was
Andy
we
Hardy.
always put on a show. Can you imagine my poor parents and my family? But yes, we always did shows. And I was always choreographing. And then that was always my heart from the very beginning. I always wanted to make dances. And as I got more comfortable, my confidence really started in high school. I knew that was it. And as I made my way into the dance studio every day, it became more real that that's what I wanted to do.
Do you think you alluded to the fact that you put on plays and so on when you were a kid? Do you think of dance as a form of storytelling?
100%. So all of my dancers are not really movement based as much as they're very athletic in the concert world. My full length stories are all love stories. I believe in love and all those wonderful things.
They're all, every one of them is about love.
It is. The bench is about love. The bench explores family love, romantic love, brother sister relationship, son, father, mother, daughter, all the love relationships in the bench. And then the HeartShakes is about relationships that are broken, relationships that are getting, repaired, and those kinds of things. Bound and Before is about high school love story that two high school lovers kind of fall apart, get back together, disconnect, get back together, disconnect, 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 and do they get back together? And then certainly Ascend is about the new show that I'm working on now at Point Park in the Pittsburgh Playhouse, is about the journey of yourself, loving yourself and loving humanity and lifting. It's called Ascend, right?
So how do you then take a story that I'm assuming you conceive, or are you basing any of your works on an underlying story that exists, or is it all coming out of your head?
Do you mean biography?
Well, when you're choreographing a dance, you have a piece of music, you're going to choreograph it too, right?
Yes.
Are you then basing it on an existing story, like a short story, or
yeah.
It is.
No, actually, no. I got what you were saying. I don't. I
You
make up
make
the
up the
stories.
stories. You're the author of the story underlying the dance.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you make that come to life through movement? That's a big question you may not be able to answer easily, but how do you bring a story to physical movement with music and no dialogue?
So for me, I love movies. I love film. I really I used to sit there in the evenings with my parents and just watch. I mean, every kind of film you can imagine. Of course, I was raised on The Godfather. My parents woke me up one night and said, "I think you're going to like this," and it was West Side Story. And I remember sitting there, and my mother made these homemade apple donuts, so good, and then popcorn. I remember like sitting there eating this, going, "I want to do that," and it's the movement to me tells a story. So even when you're walking down the street, the physicality of you, I see how you feel. And it's just different for me. It's very pedestrian, but I love theater. I love musical theater. I love acting. I love all of those things. And so to be able to bring that kind of physicality beyond technical dance to the story is the way that I can relate to it best. And I feel like maybe audience members that don't understand high art or concert dance can better relate to the story. And for me, my mission with my art is to kind of bring people together in a room. And I like pieces that unite people. And I feel like that familiarity allows people to insert themselves into a dance and better understand it. So one of my favorite scenes is the dinner scene in the bench. No one could believe that I was able to choreograph an entire dinner at a table, and it became one of the iconic moments in that show. And I'll never forget, I was with my cousin David, who wrote all the music, and they had asked us in an interview, "Oh, how did you come up with that dinner scene? It was absolutely brilliant." And I was like, "Oh, well, when I was choreographing and I just thought about dinner plates," he went, "Stop it. That was grandma's house every Sunday. All you did was bring your life to the stage. And he's right.
Well, that's what all
And
authors do.
exactly. And when in that moment, as I was finding my voice and realizing I could do this, I realized that so much of my life is in my works and my experiences, and that is certainly one of them.
All right. So when you start to form a dance, um, you're going to put certain dancers into certain roles, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
Do you
Yep.
cast people that way?
100%. So as I'm casting a new show, I go back and forth, and it is casting 101, and I have that experience from all the musical theater and theater I've done.
Hmm.
And so a dear mentor of mine, Jack Allison, said it's all in the casting, it's all in the casting, it's all in the casting.
Yes, indeed.
And it is. And so it's the same for dance. It 100% is the same.
Has it happened to you where you've gotten deep into something and realized you've miscast it?
Yes.
And then are you stuck that way, or do you try to make a change? And I'm not looking for you to call
Oh
anybody out or
no.
anything.
No, there was an experience with one particular show, and I won't call names out, but I was doing the HeartShakes, and something just wasn't clicking. And this was the first time that had happened, and I had cast with my heart instead of my head, and used a dancer that I was more familiar with.
Hmm.
Sat there, talked to my best friend who was there with me working on the project, and Jason looked at me and said, you have to make a change. And I teared up because I didn't want to hurt the dancer. Da, da, da.
Of course.
I walked in the studio the next day and approached the dancer and said, "Can I talk to you?" Said, I think that I might make a switch. And he was like, "Thank you." You know, and you, in that moment, you think you're doing something horrific. And the sense of relief that came over him was really remarkable.
It's interesting. You were probably seeing that they were having reservations.
Yeah, and there was no connection. It was a love story. It was the best duet ever in my career that I created. And I'm like, why is there no chemistry between these two? And there was just, it was a disconnect between them, the material, the story. They didn't gel. And, or to the story too, right? Not so much each other, because everyone is really close, and it's just the story of what they were trying to do. And as soon as I made the switch, magic happened. And the whole room went, and that's how but yeah, mistakes happen. Well, I don't even know if it's mistakes. It's decisions, and how you come out of those decisions matter.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Most, if not all, dances have dancers that are principals or leads within that number, correct?
100%. And those are usually selected based off a connection with the choreographer in front of the room, or even the director, right? You have to trust the person, you have to feel a connection. You almost have to feel as if this person can emulate what you're trying to get them to do through you. And so that connection is real. And I think the misconception is that a lot of probably younger dancers feel like there's favoritism, or this person. It's not even favoritism, it's an organic connection, a human connection of trust. Allowing your vision to come through another person is a very difficult thing to pass off.
Well,
And
and they all
so,
have to serve the piece,
yes, exactly.
the whole piece.
Yes.
Do you think of the other dancers, if they're in the, I guess, would you call them the chorus? They're not the principals, they're not the leads. Do you cast them as characters in your mind's eye?
In some shows, that's an excellent question. In some shows, 100%. For example, this show that we're working on now with Ascend, there are characters. The Ascend takes us on a journey through the four elements of earth, wind, water, fire. So there are characters playing the four elements. They become the four elements, but then the 12 ensemble, right? They are characters of time. So they play a very important role in the show in really kind of transferring the audience member through each episode as the show unravels through earth, through wind, through water, through fire. Those time ensemble members are key to the storytelling and the journey.
Well, thank you for saying ensemble. That was the word I was searching for, and
Oh
I
yeah,
came up with chorus, which of course
the
it is
same.
ensemble. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yep.
Uh, and most dances are not pas de deux. Most dances are not just one dancer. It's usually an ensemble of dancers. So you have to have that cohesive group that works and pulls all for the same thing. It's like any other form of entertainment to me, in the sense that you are the conceiver of it, but everyone in it is interpreting what your conception is, and you're all pulling for one end, and that's a complete piece. Correct me if you think I'm wrong there.
Oh, no, it's 100% correct. I feel like, I mean, let's go with the largest epic ensemble ever, and that would be Lord of the Rings in my head. I don't know why that surfaced right now, but Lord of the Rings, right? Everybody has to play together.
No question.
From the smallest of role to the lead actor, to the sound, to the boom, to the lighting, to the director, to the assistant, to the PA. I mean, and I think that in film, in so many ways that movie is epic. But the epic energy it takes to fill that ensemble with one direction is extraordinary. That same effort goes into a two-person play. The lighting, the costumes, the sound, it all has to move together. And if people were just simply more collaborative that way, I feel like art would definitely take on uh, just a more transformative experience for everybody through the process, all the way through that moment where you hit the stage and you pass it off to the audience and allow them that journey to transform as well.
Well, I always say, and I'm not the, it's not my idea, but I always repeat what others have said, which is that once you have created the work, whether it's a book or a movie or a play or a dance or whatever it is, once you've created it, it's yours that you've created, but it becomes the audience's piece. They own it. The people that perceive it, it becomes theirs, however they interpret it in their mind's eye as they're watching it. So you don't have any control as a creator over how an audience feels. You can try to make them feel, but you truly don't control it. They do. That's an interesting thing that happens to be that transition. So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask lots of people, and I always find the answer is interesting, which is what for you makes good choreography good?
Oh, that's an excellent question. For me, with choreography, it's really about the authentic voice. I know that's probably used a little too many times, but for me, it's really about finding a choreographer like Fosse, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bob Fosse's a genius. He had a very specific style, a
Very.
very specific voice, and you looked at it and you went, Fosse.
Fosse, no
You
question.
knew that was Fosse. That's how I feel about choreography today. I can look at a piece and go, that's Crystal Pite. Oh my God, right? And there's a handful of choreographers out there that have that signature, this is what I do.
Susan Stroman.
Susan Stroman. I mean, there are some amazing, iconic choreographers out there and some up and coming as well. And I just find that to me is really the key that moves me to be inspired, certainly.
Mm-hmm. You are an admirer of certain choreographers that are existing today and those from the past as well. Who do you most admire? Is it a Fosse?
Oh, Fosse, hands down. So the greatest compliment of my life, the very first musical I ever choreographed here at Point Park was Cabaret.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting my chance, right? They were like, do you want to choreograph a musical at the Playhouse? I was like, me? Yes. And Chris Rawson gave me I probably to this day, it's my favorite review of my life, right? When they used to do reviews. But he said it was Fosse pyrotechnics.
Oh.
Right? Athleticism, right? All those things. And that was probably the greatest compliment. And that's what made me feel like I could do this for real.
So for the listeners who don't know, Chris Rawson, who has been a guest on this very show,
I love that.
He was for I don't know, decades. He was the principal reviewer of theater for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And so that is who Kiesha is talking about. So when you start to prepare a dance, what is your first step? What do you start to do when you now know I've got this concept? Yeah. Here's the music I've got to choreograph to. You have this space and it's a certain size. Where do you begin?
I think for me, so much of it starts with the music. And I think that my music influence is two things. Growing up in my grandmother's house and down in West Aliquippa and listening to my cousins David and Ralph Lalama play their little jazz music, right? Every Christmas there was music. My parents love music. There was always Motown, R&B playing in my house, disco back in the day. Music was always there. And so I think the other side of it is when I watch movies, the soundtrack makes me see and feel things. So the music is probably my first inspiration. And then the stories kind of surface from there. Now, the bench would have been very different. I had the story set. And I called David actually, and I was talking to my dad, and I said, I need a composer. Blah, blah, blah. He said, call cousin David. I was like, he's not going to do it. He's like famous, right? So I called David. I said, listen, I have this crazy idea. I sent him 3 pages, a 3 page crazy outline idea. He sent me 60 minutes of music. I'm not kidding, like not a few days, maybe like a week later. And as soon as I heard, I'll never forget it, I was listening to the DVD or CD, right? Yeah, it's CD in my car coming home. I put it in, and I was listening to the first chimes in the bench, and I saw the show
Wow.
at 1,000 miles an hour. It was so clear,
It came to you fully formed.
fully formed as I listened to it. It just, the music takes me and drives me, certainly.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so now you've got the music, you see something in your mind's eye. Where do you begin? Is it then a casting process? Do you sit down and mark on paper what you're going to do, where people are going to go? Where do you go? How do you do this?
Yeah, I start mapping out probably the story journey, right? Where do we start? Do we start at a dark place? Because I like to start at a really stressful place that's heavy and then take the audience on a journey, right? So, Shed is a piece that I choreographed years ago, and it's really about shedding the darkness in your life. And so that started from a really dark place and evolved into a release, shedding all the darkness.
Hmm.
I would say that Kinex is about also, stress and the darkness in the world, and connecting with humanity and the power of numbers when you want to make positive change. So most of the things go that way for me. I'm a person who definitely sees light. I in the darkest of hours, for some reason, I have this gift, thank goodness, of finding light. And so that's part of it for me, is that's usually the second part, is how do I go from music to finding that ascend, right? It's the same thing through almost every single piece that I've choreographed.
Okay, so that's your conceptualizing of the whole of the
That's right.
piece. All right, do you then go into the studio by yourself and start working out moves?
Yeah, I love this. So you'll appreciate this. In my 20s, yeah, I would choreograph the whole thing and then enter the audition to see who could do it that way and then cast.
Hmm.
In my 30s, yeah, I had a couple times where I turned around and I looked at the dancers and thought, well, they look better than me. So maybe I should make this a little more difficult. In my 40s, things started really falling apart,
Well, take a number and get in line.
right? And so just the physicality of it changed. And what I noticed was that when I stopped moving and I started carving and molding and crafting the dancer, the movement actually became more complicated because my physical body was giving out, but the dancers actually became more talented than I was even in my 20s. And so now, even working on this new work, I find myself stepping back and marking it and looking at them and saying, go, how far can you go? Can your leg go this high? Instead of my leg going that high, which, I won't recover, but not anymore. So it's an interesting evolution of physical body meets mental capacity.
Well, so how do you show them what it is you want them to do?
So I demonstrate on a smaller level and then ask them to go further.
Got
And
it.
it's like through an arm, like I'll do things like this. This is your right leg, right? Up here.
Got
And
it.
I'm not moving my right leg, I move my arm.
Well, this is one of the problems with all athletics, and I think of dancers as athletes, a kind of athleticism.
That's right.
There's no way that you can
That's
go
right.
for the totality of what we think of as an average lifespan and still be at that level when you were
Yeah.
in your late teens, early 20s. The body just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of research when you're doing your pieces?
I do. It really depends on which kind of show that I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, there are moments I come up. For me, the research would mostly be visual images. Where are these things coming from? Again, I circle back to my passion for film. I love storytelling. I love imagery, a tree blowing in the wind, or just water waves, basic things to demonstrate what I'm trying to get.
Do you keep a journal of some kind? So when you see something in the world and you think to yourself, "Oh, Keisha's
Everything I've
showing me a
ever
thick notebook
choreographed.
full of her notes."
I am showing gigantic notebook right now. Yeah, so I read Twyla Tharp's book, The Creative Habit, when I was getting my
Right?
master's, and I panicked because there's this whole chapter on how she has these boxes, and every single thing she's ever choreographed has its own shoebox or box. And I was like, I don't have a box. I don't have a box, right? I was like, oh no, I'm not a real artist. And then I realized I had I just bought one for the new show. It's in my bag. And every single thing I have ever choreographed, from the smallest gig to the most extensive full length, has its own journal. And every journal is a little different. They're not the same. I walk in, I look at them. This is right for that show. That's the right energy. I'm going to get this book.
All right. So now you've gone along and you've started to work with the dancers, and you know in your mind's eye what you want it to look like. Does it usually work out as you pictured it in your head, or does it change and, morph into something different?
I have to say, it's always better. I'm pretty clear with what I'm looking for. So I think in the studio, that articulation of idea, articulation of vision is there. I think that, with choreography, I think the layer of maybe skill that I have is education.
What do you
So
mean?
teaching is different than choreographing.
It certainly is.
And so I feel like my teaching allows me the articulation to really coach it, to be able to deliver the direction that I'm trying to get from them. Whether it's a technical move or whether it's the soul,
Hmm.
I'm able to get out of the performer what I need. And I do think that that has been something that has really served me in my career. And even in the films that I've choreographed, it's not that I'm the most talented person, but I'm a teacher and I can help coach actors on how to move in a movie scene. Or I can coach high school students how to move through space with confidence. If you're just showing steps and choreographing, you're demonstrating or giving or delivering. I can, if you don't know how to deliver a step, I can coach you and break it down in a way that might be different. And not all choreographers are that way. Some just do it and say, follow me, and some are able to break it down. But for me, I would say that education component has always given me the upper hand that way.
Well, lots of extraordinary artists are incapable of teaching what they do. They
Correct.
just do it.
Yes. Yes.
To you, there's an advantage that you have this ability to teach because that, I assume, enhances your ability to make the choreography flow from your mind's eye into reality.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think it's really important in the development of your work to be able to really truly articulate from the inside out. And the inside out in dance starts with your body. And so if you can coach it and teach it and explain why, then it really helps the performer, right? Your executor, right? This person doing the thing, to be able to do it the way you want it to be done.
And how often, when you're in a rehearsal process, do you get something from the dancers that changes your thinking? You go, "Ooh, that's even better than I thought."
Yeah.
Does that happen all the time?
I would say it happens a lot.
A
So,
lot.
yeah. And I mean, also, you have to remember that I'm at Point Park University. So these dancers are here.
They're already a cut above by the time they get to you.
Yeah, they're already a cut above. And I feel like when you give them a little bit of room, magic can happen. And, I'm not a true believer in here, go over there in the corner and improv for 32 counts, and I'm going to take, that and call it my choreography. I don't believe in that kind of collaboration for me, because I'm not sure that it would allow itself to go where it needs to go for the story. So, I mean, I know there's different strategies and methods to choreographing. Certainly now today, creating a piece, there's a lot of artists that have like dance name of the company and dancers, and they include them in that process. I think for me, it's I've understood collaboration in a different way as I get older. And
Explain what that means.
so without the dancers, I don't have a work. It's
That's
not
true.
Kiesha, the choreographer, is the only thing happening in the space.
Although theoretically, you could go down to the animation students and have them animate a dance for you.
And here we are now, right?
Yes.
So it's interesting. We've incorporated animation and motion capture in Ascend.
Great.
And it's the first time that I've done that in a project.
Great.
So
Yeah.
that was an extraordinary experience, and one that I hope to continue and bring to Point Park, to evolve more. But yeah, it's working together again to meet that one direction focus, and people all get there in different ways. And for me, that's the best way that I know how to get there.
I'm always amazed when I see, because I've never, I mean, I've danced in some things, but I wouldn't actually categorize what I'm doing dance. It's movement of some kind because I'm no dancer.
Movement is
Um,
dance? Yes.
well, but I'm saying I don't have, I've been in musicals and have danced,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't call it
Dancer.
dancing. So one of the things that amazes me when I see people auditioning for dance, because I've seen some auditions, is somebody will stand up and say, okay, do this, 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 and this. And there's a whole bunch of moves to it. And they just do it. How does that work? How does a dancer, when somebody just shows them something, lickety split? Because if you rattled off a whole bunch of words to me and said, okay, say those back to me, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yes, you would.
So,
No.
I'm not so sure.
I think it's three different things, right? When you're in the studio, there's a laser focus, so it's focus, right? And the other one I would say is practice. So when you're in a dance studio, almost every day, the dance teacher's throwing steps at you and you have to learn them quickly. And so it's practice. It's not as if someone walked off the street and jumped into an audition. However, when you don't practice all the time, you do lose those skills.
Sure.
So it is a skill. It is a practiced behavior, which is really interesting.
And that's the same thing for memorizing the whole dance then.
100%. And it just becomes no different than someone reading a monologue, right? So if you remember, I remember watching, my goodness, why is his name escaping me? The Star and the Bear.
The Bear, Jeremy Allen White.
Jeremy. I was like, Jeremy. That last scene in episode 1, that camera moved in, closed in on that monologue in a one-shot take, one camera. That single shot right there, I looked at my husband and I went, he just won the Emmy. And he did. But I mean, that to me takes those things as well: focus, practice, and the third piece of it is dedication. Dedication to your craft and constantly doing it and constantly doing it and constantly doing it. When you're in the room, you have to focus. It's constant practice, but then that dedication to those things.
Can you see that in a dancer as they're auditioning for you?
100%. I think that there's an energy about it, there's a focus, and there's a confidence. If you have focus and you have, discipline, right, and you're dedicated to this thing and you're practiced, you're going to have a confidence about you. And if you're not, you're unsure, you're uncertain, something's off, and that is very, very readable. I tell students all the time, or whoever I'm working with, they're like, if you had one piece of advice, in an audition situation, what would it be? And I'm like, confidence.
Can you teach that to someone?
I think in time, yeah. I mean, I do believe that. It is something, though, that you have to work on yourself. They can gain confidence.
Have you seen students go through the program who come in and they're shy and not confident, and you see them blossom into a confident dancer?
Yes. That's my favorite part. Yeah, that's the greatest reward, is to see the kids. I shouldn't even call them kids because they are adults.
They're adults.
They know what they're doing, but they are. And to see them flourish is the greatest thing for me. That's why I think that's what keeps me to keep teaching and here at Point Park to keep going. And it's interesting, but the confidence thing, they can also gain confidence within a certain work. The first couple days of choreography in my concert works is really challenging. And because the vocabulary is authentic, it might not be familiar or be comfortable. But as you go through it and it gets in your body and you can feel it and it's working and it's familiar and carved and crafted, you gain that confidence within a work. It's no different than rehearsal for a musical or a play or whatever.
Well, it's like a basketball team. It's a team of players running down the court, coordinated in real time, not choreographed, but they've rehearsed it. So it gets into their body that this is what we're going to do if something happens this way.
That's right. That's exactly
same for dancers, I assume.
Yeah, 100%. Same exact thing.
So You alluded to this already numerous times. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, musicals. There is a difference between choreographing, I'm going to assume, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, choreographing a dance work for a recital or a concert versus putting a number into a musical play.
Mhm.
Yes?
100%.
So, what are those differences?
Yeah, I feel like I'll start with similarities, right? So the similarity would be that the choreography should propel the story,
Absolutely.
right? So I think that a lot of times it's like the 11 o'clock number, and then you're like, but what story were we telling? I feel like there's like a lot of dancing and a lot of stuff, but we haven't
Mm-hmm.
propelled the story forward. The Outsiders on Broadway right now is a perfect example of telling the story through the choreography to keep it moving forward.
Right.
Illinois was the same way, right? Move the story forward through the movement. Those would be the similarities, concert dance, musical theater. I think the difference is that in concert dance, so much of it, it doesn't really rely on narrative, or it doesn't rely on props, set pieces, those kinds of things. And you can see in today's concert dance, a lot of those kind of elements are being added to the dance to make it more interesting, storytelling, all of those things. I think the other thing too is a lot of concert dance works have kind of gotten smaller
Well,
because
sure.
funding has gone away. And so you have less numbers to deal with. And when you're doing big musicals, a lot of patterns come into play.
Like what?
So I would say lines, cannons, some of your traditional big numbers that are,
Like a kick
wow, I
line
don't,
or something like that?
yeah, I mean, those, and then bold, a lot of bold,
Flash.
I guess concert, yeah, but concert dance can be
Well,
bold
sure.
too. So, like, I don't know that there's real big
Do you
differences,
approach
except
choreographing a number in a musical different than choreographing a piece that you've created yourself?
yeah, definitely. I do
So, what's
feel
that difference?
the
How do you approach it
musicality.
differently?
The musicality is
Musicality.
always different for me. Yeah, because there's so many accents and dynamics, and I guess that's what I mean by bold.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in musical theater you can look at a music director and say, "Can I get a ting on two to accent the little hat?" And those kinds of fun things. But yeah, I do feel like I approach it differently in the fact that you got to tell the story though. And in concert dance, I can take a longer journey where there's a three maybe section piece that takes you from down to
Right.
up, right? But this is how do I transfer to connect that character to that character? Why does that character angry with that character? They shouldn't be dancing together. I mean, the dance at the gym in West Side Story is perfect for this, right? But if you connect characters that shouldn't be together, it doesn't make sense. So I think that would be the one thing is the narrative in musical theater would be completely approached with first. That's the first action. Where maybe in concert dance, it's the
So
movement.
you're talking about one of my favorite topics to talk about, which is story structure. So in a musical, it is a structured piece that has specific structure that must
That's
have
correct.
every single piece of it must relate to the whole. In a dance recital, I think that's true too, but I think it's less obvious to an audience unless you're very specific about what those movements are doing. You have to have that structural integrity, which is what I'm glad to hear you
Yes,
say, or else the dance piece suddenly in the dance in the in the musical number doesn't make sense in the story.
that's correct.
It has to support the story totally.
Yeah, and I mean, so the bench when I first did it was concert dance fused with theater, right?
Right.
And I'm going to circle back to that dinner scene one more time. That dinner scene transformed concert dance for a lot of people because there was 9 million story chapters, check marks that we had to go through in that dinner scene to get from point A to B. Why was the dinner scene there? Why do we care? What happened? What are the conflicts? Who are the people? And that's rare in concert
Mm-hmm.
dance. You can have a duet go on for 12 minutes in concert dance and it's the same story. They love each other, right? And they make pretty lines and they're doing 5 pirouettes, but it's 12 minutes long to tell that story. Where in musical theater, usually it's a little quicker.
So when you're working on because you've done a lot of theater work where the dance is in a live situation with a live audience, but you've also done a certain amount of camera work.
Yeah.
What are those differences? What changes there?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So it was interesting work on the television shows and films that I've been so blessed to be invited to be a part of, and it's completely different. I think you're choreographing. It's blind as a choreographer for the projects that I've worked on. I haven't had,
Blind.
so you're working with a director that might see the number one time,
Ah,
and that's when you're on the set. And then the cinematographer, in my experience, is just doing whatever they want. They don't really invite you in to have the conversation that you should shoot this from here and maybe consider this angle here. I've never been in a situation where it was like Chicago the movie or La La Land and had that kind of experience until I did American Rust. And I walked on the floor waiting for the director, and I thought it would be the same conversation. And he looked at me and he said, "The floor is yours." And I went, "I'm sorry." Right. And I, in 1 minute, I went, "Oh," in 1 second, right? "Oh my God." And then I went, "Okay, great." And so I was able to talk to the cinematographer and the first AD and walk through what I thought it would be. And when I look at that wedding scene, wow, I think it's in the second episode or the end of the first. It's the first or second episode. I watched that, and it's one of my favorite moments of my works on film because you could see it. And so there's a handful of things that get lost because of the way they're filming or editing or whatever it is, especially with a choreographer.
well, I've had the great good graces to interview Rob Marshall on this show,
Exactly.
and had a conversation with him on the show about,
Yeah.
You're a choreographer. You started as a dancer. You've been a
Right.
choreographer your whole life. Is that a huge advantage when you then have the dance and you've got the control of the camera as
Yes.
well? And he said absolutely, because he could
Absolutely.
then choreograph the camera to his vision.
That's right. And that's a thing. I mean, and where the camera is pointing is choreography, right?
100%.
And exactly. And it is all the same. And when you can control all that, and I never realized, I would watch movies and clips and be disappointed and go, "Oh, they missed the best part." And through the years, even with the Jimmy Awards, if there was a big moment for dance with all those talented, amazing, talented students on stage, there were moments where the highlight reel would come out and I'd go, "Oh my God, they missed the best part." So through the years, I was like, "Could you please just edit this in there to make sure that we get the one good dancey part?"
Well, going back to Astaire, that's why he insisted that they have the camera wide and you could see all of the movement.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that as a young person coming up, I didn't feel that it was my place to do that. I just couldn't believe I was there. Like, how did I get here? I'm so lucky. And then as I went through it, I just started asking the questions like, "But if you come over here, that'd be great." And yeah, that's
Explain
pretty
for
cool.
the audience who probably has no idea what we're talking about. What is the Jimmy Awards? What's that all about?
Oh, the Jimmy Awards celebrate high school musical theater. And what it does, it's very much like the Tony Awards for high schools and best actors and actresses from around the country. And I think there are up to 55 participants this year, which send two. So that takes us to 110
Mm-hmm.
hopefuls, right? Performing arts hopefuls go to New York City. They experience 1 week of training, oh my goodness, staging, choreography, coaching, all the things. They get to see Broadway shows. Last year, we went to the Tony Awards. It's a pretty amazing experience, and the entire week culminates in them actually performing on the Broadway stage, doing a show, and then they announce, finalists and winners and all those things. But it's really not about that. When you go, what people see is probably different than what actually happens, of course, but it's not the experience in and of itself really kind of eliminates the competitive factor. And then you realize that it's a bunch of theater people who love theater coming together to make theater, and it's awesome.
And this was, tell me if I'm wrong, this was started by Van Kaplan, yes?
Yeah, so it was actually Van Kaplan, myself, and Michael Moritz. We are the co-founders of the Jimmy Awards. So for 15 years, we built that program, and to have that legacy live on is definitely one of the greatest honors of my life for sure.
And Van, for decades, ran the Pittsburgh CLO.
Yes, he did. I think it's 24 years. Yeah, 24 years.
And am I right? The Jimmy Awards is named after Jimmy Niederlander.
Jimmy Nederlander, yeah. So Van formed a partnership with Nederlander, and they have a great relationship. And so Jimmy Nederlander, of course, the Nederlanders wanted something after their founding. Jimmy's amazing, and we wanted to definitely honor his legacy and his life. And this program is perfect because he cared so much about the future of the arts, and what better way to do it than with young aspiring hopefuls.
Of course. And has anyone come out of there and done well in the world?
I would say almost, I don't even know. I mean, at this point, it's got to be hundreds because it's been years, but huge stars.
Did Andrew Barth Feldman come out of there?
Andrew Barth Feldman, Renee Rapp. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, Renee
Jasmine is
Rapp.
currently starring in Boop right now. Mason Alexander. And here, the crazy thing about it is that Kyle Selig, the list is endless. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the way that the talent is harnessed, and then just the talent around the country for musical theater and the arts is extraordinary. The United States has this way of really, really teaching and celebrating young artists, and I love that about it. So, I really hope that we regain funding and support, and continue to support the arts in so many ways. But the cool part about the Jimmies is that as many as the success stories have happened around, the winners, more success has happened with people that have just participated in the program. They weren't even finalists or winners, but they were just in the show, had a great time with the experience for the week, and have gone on to do this thing, and have also absolutely made it on Broadway, or doing film, or doing regional theater, but they're still in the business. They love it, and it's a profound program.
Well, I think that's exceptional, and it's really
Yeah.
cool that you helped to found it and run it for a
Yeah.
long time. It seems to me that it's still the one of the quintessential American art forms.
Yes.
Musical theater, along with jazz, is quintessentially American, and yet it's all spread around the world at this point. I think that's one of the testaments to how good it actually is. And yes, we have great talent here in this country. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your role with the Pittsburgh Playhouse at this point.
Ah.
Uh, what are you doing?
So I am the executive producer of the Pittsburgh Playhouse. I oversee everything that happens here, which is awesome. We have a lot of things going on. We have the Conservatory of Performing Arts, which is, Point Park University, music, dance, all the things, right? Musical theater, rather, theater, acting, dance, pretty awesome. What I love the most about the Playhouse is our theater production students as well. We make things here. We have our own scene shop, prop shop, costume shop. The list is endless. There's an artists making art from every aspect of the industry in this house, and it's a pretty special place. And then we have our presenting series, which we've tied to our alumni. I really want to focus on bringing our alumni back to showcase their works, what they're working on in any realm, whether it's writing, whether it's performing, whatever it is, dancing in a professional company, and bringing them in to show our students they can do it. Another aspect is new works. We call it the Arts Accelerator. That's the Ascend show that I've mentioned because it's clearly on my mind. I just came from rehearsal. But it's one of those things where we're launching new works and developing new works. We're trying to definitely do more family friendly activities, and to reach broader audiences. We want to make an impact on the city of Pittsburgh, whether it's economic growth, whether it's tourism. We want to, and I would say population, want to create jobs to keep students here. You don't necessarily have to go to New York or LA or Chicago to work. How can we keep you here in Pittsburgh and keep you moving forward in the art form that you love so much?
Absolutely
So
right.
that's what's happening at the Playhouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting. And for a little while there, as we came out of COVID, there was a lot of less activity there. It seems like there's a lot more activity now.
Yeah, the Playhouse was built 6 or 7 years ago, and then COVID hit,
Hmm.
right? And so I think it was really quiet for a little while. And then we had a transition through three presidents, actually. So we had a president who retired, and then a president that stepped in and stepped down. And then we had Chris Brusalis, President Brusalis came in. And with that came a new vision. So as that new vision came through, when we had the first conversation of me taking the lead to help bring that vision and the vision that I had for the place to come to life, we connected immediately. Same page, same vision. This made sense. And when you start forming I think shows, productions, events for the community, they start coming. So projects for the community, by the community. And Pittsburgh's pretty cool that way. It's a loyal city that wants to support Pittsburgh. And I think we do it better than a lot of people. It's a cool place.
Well, Pittsburgh is culturally rich at this point, and that's
Yes, it
very
is.
helpful.
And that's what I mean. I do think that Pittsburgh is this cool place that just keeps transforming. And the president is talking about, Renaissance 3 because this place just keeps, the city just won't die down.
No, the city won't die down. It's been knocked down many times and always risen from the
Gets
ashes.
up. That's right. That's exactly the fight that we have in us.
We get up off our feet and fight.
That's right. Exactly. That's my favorite. I did Chinese proverb: fall down 7 times, get up 8. Let's
Oh, let's
go.
go.
That's right.
So I've been having
right.
just a marvelous conversation for an hour now with Kiesha Lalama, and we're going to wind the show down a little bit. And I'm just wondering, in all of your vast experiences, can you share with us a story that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny?
So this is one of my favorite stories, and again, this show is on my mind, so it's perfect. A few years, not a few years, maybe 10 years ago, I was working on a show and I had a hiccup and I could not figure out what was wrong with the show. My boys were there with me, Jake and Jax, and we went back to the rental apartment and I had a glass of wine and I was just sitting there writing down notes, finished my wine, and my youngest looked at me and said, "Now that you've had a glass of wine, can I give you some notes?" He was 12 years old and he gave me notes and he fixed the entire structure of the show. So he looked at me and Jack said, "If you move this scene and do this, it will make sense. When you originally wrote it, you had an intermission. There's no intermission now. So if you do this, this, and this, it'll work." He went on to Bucknell to become the editor in chief of his newspaper. He's a journalist, he's a writer. And he and Jake both helped me write the show Ascend. So we created that together because they've come by it naturally with me. I think people would think that was weird and quirky and funny and all the things. But to have your child look at you and go, "Now that you've had your wine, can I give you some notes?"
Yeah, but it's in his genes
It
because you were
is.
telling people what to do at 9 years old.
Yeah. So he started telling me what to do at 12. And they're still doing it today, Steve. They're still doing it today.
And they're not going to stop doing it.
Thank you for that reminder. Yeah. It's awesome, though, to have that relationship and trust. And I looked at him and I realized in that moment that he was going to be a creator of some kind. And so, he's a journalist now and loves writing and all the things. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, more power to him, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
All right, so last question for you today, Kiesha.
Yeah.
You've given us gigantic amounts of advice throughout this whole show, but I'm wondering if you have a single solid piece of advice that you like to give to those that are starting out in the business, either as a dancer or an educator or whatever, or people who are in a little bit trying to get to the next level.
Yeah, I love this. I think through my career, the one thing that I regret is that I wasn't living in the moment.
Mm.
So much was happening so fast that I wasn't really present. I was always finishing, wanted to complete it, wanted to be success and move on to the next thing. There are lots of things that I missed that I don't remember. People are like, "Remember that time?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And so I would say live in the moment, be present, and cherish the time that you have because it is fleeting. And, instead of celebrating the small successes in the studio or celebrating the standing ovation or whatever it was okay, what's next? And trying to prove myself and get the next thing to stay relevant or whatever it was, or all those things, kind of missed it. And as I got older, that changed for me. And I was able to pause a little bit and go, okay, this is an awesome moment. I can feel this. So that's my advice.
That's a very wise advice because sometimes that takes a long time to actually figure out.
Yeah, that is true.
And truthfully, you can tell a young person that, but they may not see it until they have some experience in the world.
That's true. And I'm sure that we've been told that advice and just didn't understand it until now.
Well, what is it? The infamous cliched phrase is "youth is wasted on the young."
Yes.
But the truth of it is, you have to kind of live your experience in order to find these things.
Yeah, and it's true. And to be able to share it, is such an honor, and thank you for having me. I mean,
Oh,
this is a wonderful platform to help so many people, and reminders, and you inspire, and it's all the messaging that we need and continue to feed off of. So as you go through and what you're doing, please keep going, because it's wonderful.
well, thank you very much. Kiesha Lalama, this has been a great pleasure to have you on the show, and I greatly appreciate your time, your energy, and your wisdom. It's very much greatly appreciated here today.
Honored. Thank you.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.